Hey guys, for today's video, we're going to be taking my client from brassy and streaky and splotchy to a really pretty soft mushroom brown color, but it has a slight warmer tint than being super ashy. So if you want to see how we tackle the service, keep watching. You can follow me on Instagram at Christy@the_cottage. All right, really quickly, here's my client's before again, and before we get into the service, we're going to go in the back room and break down everything that we're going to do today.
I wasn't planning on recording today, so I look like absolute shit. But what am I talking about? I generally look like crap half the time anyways. Not as much lately though, but today definitely did not have time to not look like crap. Anyways, I just wanted to let you know I wasn't planning on recording, but I thought the service was going to be a good one to record. So here we are. And I also want to take note that I need to get my Botox done because I'm starting to not feel like a frozen bitch as much as I was before. So there's that. If you see me getting wrinkles again in my forehead, that's why. Anyways, enough about me. Today for my service, I thought we were just going to be doing a full highlight, but the reason why I think this would be a good one to record is because she actually wants to tone down to kind of I kind of want to use the term mushroom brown, but I don't feel like it's as ashy as what a mushroom brown truly is, but it's definitely like a lot cooler. So we're just going to call it that. We're going to call it a mushroom brown. So to start the service off, you guys already know, I'm using Schwarzkopf Blonde with 20 volume. You guys already know. Her hair is naturally probably like a 4. She has pretty dark hair. And then just like little sprinkles of gray here and there. And our goal is to try and blend her roots, get rid of her roots. She normally does, like, before when I've done her hair, like the really heavy, like streaky, like two-toned, like blonde, caramel, kind of like that older school color. And then the last few times that I had done her hair, we tried to like blend her roots and do more of an ombre, but her schedule doesn't allow her to book with me as often because I'm more booked out than what notice she has. So she's gone to other places sometimes, and then she ends up finally being able to book with me. So we kind of have to fix whatever's going on in there. So she has a little bit of bleeders from the last service that she's had, and it's kind of brassy. So I told her, I think if she wants to do just more like an all over color, like we'll go in there and do some really fine like weaves, maybe not baby lights, maybe like softer towards the baby light and not necessarily like a heavy weave, just to break up her roots. But then we're going to tone it back down to have like an all over like pretty softer tone. So and then we're also going to throw some foils in through the back here because it's been a while since she's had her back broken up at all. So long story short, that's what we're going to do.
And as always, we're going to use Schwarzkopf Blonde Meet with my Lifesaver Olaplex for every service. All right, so here she is again, and she knows that she needs a trim, but with the holidays and everything coming up, she just wants to let it be long, and then we'll slowly take her up and maybe add some layers to get that damage off. And you could see up at the top there where she parts her hair, she has some pretty bad bleeders, so we're going to try to blend some of those out and then also try to eliminate some of the streakiness and some of the lines in the hair. So to start the service off, we're just going to go through and do the highlights around the face. Someone's asked before, how do you blend out horizontal stripes in the hair, like on the side here when she pulls her hair back? You might be able to see that she has like some really heavy streaks going through, like those race card streaks through the side of her head. And that's from somebody foiling just straight up the side on her hairline without doing foils around her hairline like this, which helps it blend a little bit better and have more of a natural sun-kissed highlight. It just blends a little bit more softer with the face. And the way that I've gone through previously with breaking up any of those foils that I've had is just going through the way that I'm doing right now. You just have to go in a little bit tighter, maybe do less subsections and pack in more foils just to break up those lines. And then eventually, like even within the first service, that should really break up the streakiness on the side of the head. You might have to do a little bit heavier of a weave like I'm doing here. Sometimes I go in just with a really soft like baby light, but because she has some of those streaks going up the side of her head, sometimes you have to go in with a stronger weave and a little bit heavier of a foil. So it's still going to help eliminate those lines and blend out, but it's going to be a little bit heavier around the hairline, a little bit brighter than if we just did a really soft baby light. But that's okay because it's still going to blend really nicely. And then the next time that you do the service, you can keep doing a little bit softer and softer of a foil. At least those lines are going to be broken up now. So that's how I would go about eliminating any streakiness or lines in the hair. So now we're going to go through and do the top of her hairline. And I want to point out that, yes, I am aware that she has like breakage and damage in her hair, and she knows that too. I'm trying to be very cautious of not running bleach through the ends where I can, but I also want to say that it looks like the previous stylist that went through and did her highlights, it's like they went through and bleached her roots, but where she had like darker hair, they didn't run any bleach through the ends. And then there's some areas where they didn't even retouch it. So it's like she has some really uneven chunks of like brassiness or blonde in the hair. So where I'm trying to weave out the hair as much as I can, I am. But there are going to be times in the foil that you do see me overlap. And trust me, I'm trying really hard not to overlap. But sometimes you just have to do it. So I was really cautious the way that I was foiling her hair and paying close attention to it. So if you see me overlap, I know that I'm overlapping, and you don't need to let me know that I overlapped in the comment section. I am aware. And we're just going to finish up this side of the hairline. She parts her hair pretty far over to the side, so I really want to make sure that I have good connection, and her bangs are a little bit shorter. So I want to make sure that she has brightness all around her hairline. I've had bangs before, and I know sometimes if somebody just goes straight down the center of the forehead, but maybe their hair, you know, shouldn't be foiled that way. Maybe you have to break it up like I'm doing her foil, kind of like two sections up at the top, just to make sure that we can get enough coverage to the sides of her head. Especially having bangs, if you don't connect the sides of the face, the foils there, with like the forehead foils, then sometimes you can get like dark holes on the side of the head. So making sure that you have a good connection will ensure that, especially with somebody that wears a little bit shorter of a bang, that they're not going to have these like dark holes or dark bangs showing through when they want to have nice brightness. So make sure that you're connecting your foils all the way around the hairline. And now I'm just going to ask her to make sure where exactly does she part her hair, because I want to make sure that I'm starting right there, because I'm going to start at the top of her head and foil down. See, in some of those areas that I was just showing you, that's where I'm going to have to overlap. So I'm I'm aware that I know, like you can see through the ends of the hair, she has some splotchiness and banding and unevenness. And sometimes in those cases, you just have to overlap, even if you don't want to, just to try and even everything out. So we're going to start at the top of her head, exactly where she parts her hair. I'm going to do a really fine, weave, and then I'm gonna just hit her roots. I'm gonna try not to go over the line of demarcation at all, but you can see where she has these darker pieces. I'm gonna get my foil comb and be very cautious to pick up just those dark hairs and try to leave any of the blonde behind. But again, the foil's uneven, so there might be some areas where I am picking up some blonde just to even everything out, and I'm gonna just throw that foil on underneath it and just bleach through these darker pieces. That way it'll ensure that any of those blonde pieces that are underneath, I'm not overlapping. I'm trying really hard not to pick up any of those blonde strands, and this will prevent any damage from happening. So she has very, very thick hair, and I want to say that that subsection looks really heavy, but it's actually a really thin section of hair, but her hair is just so thick that it looks like a thicker subsection, but it's really not. So my subsections in between every foil is going to be pretty minimal, but just because her hair is thicker, it's going to look a little bit heavier of a subsection. So if you're doing this on somebody else, just know that I'm not really taking that much of a subsection. So again, we're just going to weave through any of those blonde pieces. And then right here, you can see some of those blondes go through like the midsection. So I'm going to try and pull those aside and be very cautious not to hit any of those areas. We're just going to continue this throughout the rest of the service. I am also trying to alternate between slices and weaves, and you can see at the beginning when I showed you her hair how she had all those really defined streaks in her hair, and going through the way that I'm going more horizontally down the side of her head up at the top of the crown area, that's going to help eliminate and break up those streaks. So we're going to do like a heavier weave and then a slice, weave, slice, and so on and so forth. And that's going to eliminate any of those lines that are pre-existing in her hair and soften those up. All right, we're going to finish foiling down just a little bit further on the side of her head, and then we're going to flip to the other side and repeat the same thing. All right, now that we're done on this side, we're going to flip over to the other side and repeat the same process. But this very first foil that matches up where the other side is right where she parts her hair, I'm going to take this thinnest little sliver of a section because I want to make sure she has good coverage, especially where she parts her hair, to make sure that everything's broken up and she feels like we've lifted her roots enough. And I'm going to take minimal subsections just over in this area, probably like an inch on either side of where she parts her hair. That way she has a lot of, I don't want to say brightness because we're toning down, but I want to make sure that her roots are lifted enough so that she doesn't feel like she has too much darkness of her natural color, because we are toning down from somebody that's been previously, had a lot of blonde. Even if it goes a little bit brassier, it's still brighter than what we're going to be doing. So I want to make sure that we, especially where her part goes, I want to make sure we break through her roots a little bit more to brighten them up, because I don't want her to see her dark roots and feel like she's so dark all over, on top of toning her down quite a bit. So going through and just breaking through the roots, even though we're toning them down, is a good way to make sure that they feel like they're still getting root coverage. If they have a little bit of gray, going through and doing some fine weaves just to try to break up the gray a little bit and to minimize that and blend with the roots is a good way to go about this service, because I told her ahead of time, this color that you're wanting doesn't really have any blonde highlights, but I feel like we need to go through and just break up your roots, because we could have just gone through and put a color all over what she had when she came in, but then she's still going to feel like she has any of the grays that she has. She's not going to feel like she has any dimension in the root area. She's going to feel too dark at the top of her head. So just going through to break up the roots is a good idea, even if you're not necessarily going to leave them bright or leave the highlights in the hair. Just to give them a little bit extra dimension and to soften up the root area is a good idea to go through with a foil. All right, we're just going to finish up the side here, and then we're going to flip to the back. And then when I turn her head, especially how the light hits it, you'll be able to see how really splotchy the hair is. And it's interesting because I found that on this side of the head, she had a lot more unevenness and banding in the hair than the other side. So again, in some areas, you're going to see me overlap. And I really don't want to, but I feel like for how dark the ends of her hair is versus the top, I need to extend that brightness and break it down through the ends of her hair, or else she's just going to feel like she has all of this mushroom color up at the top of her root area, and then that her ends are still really dark. So that's why I'm going to go through, and we were just going to stay up at the top of her head and do her foil, but as I got into her hair a little bit more, that's when I was noticing the banding and how dark she was still underneath. So that's why we're going to kind of stagger the foils the further down that we go. All right, now that I'm back on this side of the head, I'm going to start angling these down a little bit further and taking much larger subsections. I'm not really trying to brighten up a whole bunch down in this area. I just want to break up her roots a little bit more down here because it is so dark and it has been a while since she's gotten her hair done. So we're not trying to be light all over, but because we're toning it down, it's okay just to stagger the foils a little bit and just break up the hair a little bit more. You can see like right in here, these foils, it's probably been like half a year since she's gotten her roots done. So that's why we're just going to go through and stagger these foils in and start angling them down. That way it will connect to the back middle section. All right, and now we're just going to come over here and repeat the same thing. And now that we're in the back, we're just going to finish foiling down this back center section. And then when we get to the very bottom, below the side foils, I'm just going to kind of brick lay the foils and stagger them a little bit more just to get a little bit of coverage through the ends of her hair. But I'm kind of going to put a little bit of diagonal pieces through there too, just to stretch the foils out and not have to pack the foils in so close. But sometimes I feel like when you bricklay them, you can get a little bit more coverage with your foils, but not have to do so much work. And, you know, if you just go straight up both sides of the head, then you're kind of limited to what you can do, and you kind of have to just follow that pattern all the way up. But if you bricklay your foils, then you can stagger them a little bit more and break up the hair a little bit more, but not have to throw as many foils in there. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's why I kind of like staggering them and bricklaying them a little bit more. than just going straight up or straight down the center or the sides or whatever. Also, I want to say that I like foiling this way. I don't really foil this way as much anymore. In some of my older videos, you might have seen me foil this way a lot more than what I do now. But because her hair is so dark, I wanted to start at the top and work my way down. And I like doing it this way because the foils just sit really nicely on top of the head and I don't have to move the foils around or disrupt them or anything. So, and this way it makes it really easy to check your work too without having to lift and move the foils around. So this is all that we did. You can see all the foils nice and clearly. She sat for probably like 45 minutes, and now I'm going to go back through and check her foils to make sure that they're lifting really good. She lifted really nicely. Normally she's a little bit brassier, but I think because I let her sit like that good 45 minutes before checking, then I didn't have to use a blow dryer, heat her hair or anything like that, but she got some really good lifts. So that's why I really like Schwarzkopf Blonde Me. I feel like it just lifts really good and eliminates the brassiness. So you can see here by foiling this way too that I'm able to just reach in, check whatever foil I want to check, fold it back up, and then not really have to move around any of the other foils, which sometimes that can create bleeding if then you have to let it sit for a little bit longer. I can just fold it back up and then we're good. So I'm going to pull the foils out now. We're going to wash her hair, and then we're going to go talk about what we're going to do for formulating her toner.
Okay, I just got done trying to figure out what I'm going to do for toning her hair. So her roots probably lifted to like a level 9 and the rest of her hair is pretty warm. So, but she's sitting kind of at a level, maybe like some areas 7, 8, like she's not very light all over. So I kind of have a jumble of like 6 different toners that I'm going to throw together. And you guys know that I'm not going to break it down as far as a quarter of this and 3/4 of that or whatever. I have it in like the most that I use, the medium that I use, and like just the littlest bit that I use. So I'm going to show you guys that right now. So these are the toners that I'm going to use for her formulation. I just took a while to figure it out. So I have them spaced out, and the majority of, like probably half of my formulation is going to be the 7-0, which is just natural. And then I also have this beige chocolate toner because I kind of want a beigier, warmer tone in there to counteract these cooler tones because those grab extremely ashy. I also have the level 9 in here because if she is in areas like a level 10, and because we're toning it down a few shades, I want to throw that level 9 in there to kind of give it a step of, you don't want to drop down from a 9, 10 to straight down to like a 7 or something because it might be kind of hollow. So anywhere that it's a 10, this warm 9 will kind of help fill that hair. So half of my formulation are going to be like these two together for the majority. Probably like a quarter of my formulation are going to be these two, which is the 7-1 and the 7-2-1. I want to use a little bit more of the 7-1 than the 7-2-1 because the 7-2-1 can really grab too ashy if you're not careful. And because of that reason, I have this 757, like a gold copper, over processed hair and pre-lightened hair resist warmth. So just having straight neutral, I feel like isn't good enough. I feel like the more copper gold of a formulation that you're adding into it, the better it will hold. So that's why we have a little bit of this gold copper that we're going to add to try to soften up these ashier tones. I don't feel like these are going to do enough of that. And then I also have this level 5 right here, which I'm just going to do, a very limited amount. And that's to bring it down a little bit darker because this level 5 or level 9 is going to keep it a little bit brighter. So adding this level 5 in here is going to darken it down, but not too dark. So I feel like having the 7s and the 9 is going to keep it at like more of a level 8, which won't tone down everything else that she has in her hair, which is still kind of brassy. So that's why we'll be adding the level 5. And I feel like just these two ashier tones, as much as I've played with Schwarzkopf, I feel like they grab really, really ashy. The ash tones are very strong. So hopefully just a little bit of these two are going to be enough to soften down the warmth, and all of these together to give it that really pretty kind of like mushroomy brown tone.
All right, we're gonna bring her back to my station and apply this all over color. I feel like normally I would go through and just do it at the shampoo station, but because she has so much blonde in her hair, because in some areas her hair is so porous, I really want to focus on just applying it at the roots, then, you know, squeezing it all over her hair and rubbing it in everywhere and letting it all process together. I feel like that's not what her hair needs. It's too porous to do that, and it could potentially grab really ashy. So, especially using the Schwarzkopf toners, I love them. I think they have great coverage. It adds nice depth to the hair. But if you're not careful, no joke, I've had a few heart attacks because those ashy tones really grab. And I always feel like I'm adding enough warmth to counteract the ashiness so it doesn't overgrab. And sometimes I am like, holy cow, I can't believe how ashy that is still grabbing. So bringing her back to the station and applying here also is nice because I can start at the bottom of her hair and work my way up. And I'm also keeping an eye on how she's processing. I'm going to keep checking her hair and make sure that she's not going too ashy. And then I can always go back and add more warmth to the formulation if I need to. But I'm pretty sure I've learned my lesson and I've added enough copper, gold, and warmth and neutral to the formulation to not feel like it's going to over grab. But just to be safe than sorry, I want to make sure that I can keep an eye on it a little bit better. I'm also going to go through and pull her hairline foils aside, the blonde that we did, because her hair is really porous. So I know this is going to grab, and the hair around the face is a little bit more porous than the rest of the hair. So it could potentially grab really, really dark if we put it on too soon. So I'm going to set that hair aside, and I'm going to wait until probably like the last 10 minutes before I put the toner on. So we're going to go through, do the roots first, and then once I have all of the roots done, then I'm going to go through and start bringing it through the ends of the hair. But I will say I probably could have waited a little bit longer before I ran the toner through the ends. I probably could have waited more than 15 minutes. So her roots sat for probably 15 minutes before I went through and then combed it through the ends. And I wish I would have just waited a little bit longer because I feel like her ends maybe picked up just slightly a little bit cooler than the rest of her hair. But you can see here how her hair is processing. I feel like I can see that warmth showing through, so that makes me feel really good that it's not going to grab too ashy. But again, wherever the hair is too porous, it could potentially grab a little bit ashier. Not a whole bunch, but just enough that I noticed that maybe her ends grab slightly cooler than the rest of her hair, but it still looks really good. And that toner, that over processing, or not over processing, but that where it kind of grabs a little bit cooler, that will probably like lift out within the first time she washes her hair. So within the first few washes or whatever. So now that we have all of her roots done, it's sat for probably like 15 minutes. Now we're going to go through the ends, and during this part of your application, make sure that you have a comb that you're combing through the color through the ends. There's so many times where I see people just grab like large pieces of hair, kind of like what I'm doing right now, and then just applying the color, but not combing through it. And I feel like that's how you get holes in the hair where you don't have an even application, and then you can get like a whole bunch of splotchiness, or like what those cheetah print stripes or splotchiness, those spots that you can get in the hair. So make sure when you put a darker color on top of blonde that you're taking whatever comb and going through and just making sure you're combing through the hair to have even distribution. There's been times where I usually do my own hair, but there's been times where somebody else has done the toner and I'm just thinking like, oh, whatever, like how hard can you mess up a toner? And let me tell you, I've had so many splotchiness and spots in my hair because they just thought really quickly that they could just throw it on and they didn't comb through it or work through the hair enough to make sure that it was applied evenly. And so you can mess up a toner. So make sure that you're taking your comb and combing through the hair to have a great application. So after this sits, total she sat for probably like 25 minutes or so with the toner, and it was just really the last 5 minutes that we ran the bangs through with the toner, and that's because I wanted to try to preserve a little bit of lightness because I knew she was going to feel super dark. So making sure that she had just a little bit lighter around the face. She was really, really happy that I did that. And also, I could have let it sit a little bit longer if I wanted it to darken up like the rest of the hair. But I wanted it to stay lighter. And also, I didn't want it to over process that way. That's why we waited until the last few minutes. All right, here's her color, just blow dried, not really styled yet, but I like to show you guys the color along the way because, you know, you can see it a little bit better and how the color really is. You know, some people say that you style the hair, put curls in it just to try to make it look better, but I want to show you guys before I style the hair that her color still looks nice and even, and I'm not trying to cover up any imperfections or anything. So we're going through styling, and you can still see she has a little bit of soft dimension through her hair. Those highlights are showing through just a little bit, but it definitely blends with her natural color, and she definitely has a really pretty mushroomy tone to her hair, but it is just slightly warmer than a true mushroom brown, but it's definitely a lot cooler, but it just has a slight warm tint to it. Okay, how's the coloring?
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that looks
I
good.
look rich.
Yeah, you do.
Rich bitch come through with you.
All right, and here's her before again. Eventually we'll get those ends off, but today was not the day, so we'll work on that in the future. So here's her before, and then the after. You guys, this time of the year, the lighting is killing me. Her hair looks really pretty in this lighting, but I wish I could get more of a natural tone with the outdoor lighting. But I feel like there's a lot of shadows in the pictures and video because of the light that's directly behind me. So anyways, here's her after. She was obviously very, very happy with the hair. She really likes it. And I like that she still has some really soft dimension in the hair. She's not just like a flat all over color. Doing those highlights and then putting the color on top of it helps it blend with her natural roots, but gives it just a little bit of some dimension. You can see there some of the highlight just coming through. I think it still looks really, really pretty. And I think this color actually turned out really well. I was really happy with the formulation. She still has just a little bit of warmth to the hair, so it's not too ashy. So Thank you guys so much for watching this. I hope you guys liked the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe.